This is BBC One, and now Grandstand.
The European Championship is underway, and this afternoon we have live football. Last night, Italy and West Germany drew 1-1 in the opening match. In the same group, it's Denmark v Spain today. Kick-off 2:30, the whole game here on Grandstand. From down under... After 1,000 miles in the saddle, the last round for the milkmen. The final stage of the Tour of Britain milk race, live just after 1 o'clock. And later today, Boris Becker with Wimbledon in mind. Action from the semi-finals of the Queen's Club tournament. But first, rugby union news and another heavy defeat for Wales in the second test against New Zealand in Auckland. The All Blacks won 54 points to 9 to follow up their 52-3 victory in the first test. The All Blacks ran in 8 tries this time. Jonathan Davis did score a spectacular try for Wales near the end, but another trouncing, I'm afraid. Right, rugby league action right now. The first test in Sydney between Australia and Great Britain. Highlights with Daryl Eastlake of Channel 9.
For Australia, Gary Jack is at fullback. On the wing, Andrew Eddinghausen and Tony Curry. The centres are Michael O'Connor and Peter Jackson. Wally Lewis is at 5'8". Peter Sterling is the halfback. Lewis, of course, the captain of the side. Bob Lindner is in 13. We remind you this is the international numbering system. Paul Vaughton is in 12. Wally Fullerton-Smith in 11. Sam Bacco, Greg Canescu and Phil Daly make up the Australian pack. The coach, Don Ferner. The Great Britain side now, Phil Lachlan is at fullback. Phil Ford is on one wing. Martin Offia, very exciting player on the other. In the centres, Gary Schofield and David Stevenson. At 5'8" is David Hume. Andy Gregory is at halfback. Ellery Hanley in jumper 13. And Locke is the captain of the side. Then we have the second rowers, Andy Platt, Mike Gregory, and the front row, Paul Dixon, Kevin Beardmore and Kevin Ward. The coach, Malcolm Riley. Now let's have a look at the head-to-head situation. Overall, Australia Test played 99. Australia have won 46, lost 49, drawn 4. In Sydney, 34. Overall, 15 and 18. So a pretty tight series when you think this is the 100th Test. 46-49, the breakdown. The referee for this international fixture, Francis Depart from Toulouse in France. Australia kick off now, and plenty of defence running across. Well, Jack Gibson, this side from Great Britain has been written off, but a lot of people are saying they can come back today.
Well, they're a new team, and it's a new game. The thing I think about, we certainly don't want the referee, whether he's got the expertise to handle this game or not, because we're going to find that out pretty quick.
As Lachlan clears for Great Britain, Mick Cronin, you've been in this situation. Australia does have a lot of new faces.
They've got a lot of new faces. I noticed them out there, all seem very keyed up. I noticed Peter Jackson looked like a big man for him. I don't think that'll be their trouble. I think they'll be able to overcome that.
Well, the first penalty has gone to Australia here at the Sydney Stadium this afternoon. That brings a roar from the crowd. Ellery Hanley coming back on side. Now, Australia have 5 players in their starting lineup. Eddinghausen, Curry, Jackson, Backo, Daly make a Test debut. Historic game, 100th Test match played between the two countries. Great Britain with 49 wins, Australia 46 wins. Australia won the last 13 Tests. The Great Britain, their most recent win in Sydney was July 6, 1974. They won that one 16-11. Wally Lewis will get up and play the ball for Australia, back to Bobby Lindner. Out it comes to Fullerton Smith. He's bustled down though. Good defence from Hume. This is Backo. Backo through 1-2, but almost an intercept. Held the ball back, Backo. He could see what was coming. Mike Gregory, the tackler. And again, we'll have another scrum. So this game not having much time to settle down, Jack.
Well, this is the 4th scrum in a few minutes. There's been 3 penalties, so we're going on with rule breaches at the moment.
Ray French down on the sidelines, the BBC senior commentator. How do you see it so far?
I see it going very well for Great Britain. We're camping out in the Australians' half. It's going to Margreely's plan. His argument was to kick the ball down there and get these first 10 minutes over, Darryl.
Your thoughts on this stadium, Ray? It's something very different for rugby league.
Well, it's very different to sitting out at Headingley or Wigan. It's much more pleasant, the sun beating down. It's a magnificent stadium, there's no doubt about it. But I wouldn't like to be up there so high in the commentary box where you are.
Almost a nosebleed job just getting up here. Ray will be talking to you throughout the match. Great to have Ray French in Australia, the senior commentator for the BBC, and he'll be adding his colourful comments as Daly takes it up for Australia now, just into Great Britain's territory. He'll play it back to Canescu. Little bustling run, 3 or 4 metres. Out for Sterling. Sterling on to Vorton. Vorton goes hard and straight. Oh, and some big defence from Great Britain, and this is the stuff that the Bulldogs are made of. I think we've got a Test match on our hands here as Lewis kicks for touch, and he'll find it too. A great kick, almost. Well, it almost went to the corner flag. It's in by about 4 centimetres. A great kick from Lewis. Jack Gibson.
Well, that's about as close as you can get. But whether they're going to win the feed or not is a different matter.
Wally Lewis, Jack, has played in 25 Tests, 17 as captain, 3rd Test series as captain. Versus England, yet to taste defeat. So he's got a marvellous record, Wally Lewis. But Great Britain have the ball. Ellery Hanley now goes for a gallop. But sideways the Englishmen are running at the moment. They need to straighten up this attack. The Australian defence straight line. Ward hard and fast, and a big shoulder charge there, but plenty of green and gold to meet him too. Camped inside their 22, the danger zone, as Beardmore now takes it out 3 or 4, just clearing that area. Some heavy defence coming in from Australia as Gregley flicks it back for Lachlan. Lachlan driving the ball down deep. Gary Jack beautifully positioned for Australia. Stevenson around him though, and they wrap him up pretty quickly. Midway between the half and the quarter, Australia's end of the ground. Backo gets plenty of attention from Great Britain. But he loses the ball, so it's working. Some bustling defence, and Backo loses for Australia. So Great Britain now with a chance. Gregory to Gregory. And this is better stuff now as they wind up. defence there from Australia. Wally Pullett and Smith came in, and by gee whiz, that was a big hit. Ward saying that's off the elbow, not happy. That was Daly, the big hitter. By gee, that was plenty of defence. Referee, the play calling them out now, having a few words to say to Phil Daly. Let's see it again. Up they came, Beardmore, and bang. Well, it was a bit high, Jack.
It was a blatant high shot. If Daly keeps doing that, it'll be like the Gong Show. He won't be around till the finish.
Bill Lachlan from St Helens lining it up, and by gee, we've seen some great kickers over the years, Mick.
Oh, they've always been able to produce a good goal kicker, the English.
Again, he gets plenty of height, and this time gets the 2 points. So Great Britain move to the lead, leading Australia 2 points to 0. Good kick from Lachlan. Paul Lachlan from St Helens. Plenty of Great Britain support. Long way to go yet, fellas. Stevenson takes it for Great Britain. Australia take him just short of the halfway line. Beardmore, dummy half. The runners come through. This is Dixon. Dixon under a high one from Backo. Beardmore out to Gregory. Gregory dancing around on the spot. Still making territory, though. He's a cheeky little player, this fellow. He makes ground, and he likes to bustle on his way up too. They get it on the Ward. He goes for another 4 or 5. Now he's driven back. Gets it out for Schofield. Out they come for Beardmore. Here's Gregory. Oh, and he's just touched by Gary Jack and brought down. Lucky for Australia, that. But England running with plenty of purpose now. Out it comes for Hume. They get it on to Ellery Hanley. Heading for the corner. Hanley, he'll score. Oh, yes, sir. Great Britain scored the first try. Great Britain are in. Ellery Hanley just scooted for the corner, and too big, too strong, and too fast. Great Britain jubilant here this afternoon. Leading now 6 points to 0 with a kick to come. And really, you can go back to Andy Gregory there. He danced away. He had Australia at 6s or 7s, but it was Schofield that took the ball. Ellery Hanley threw the dummy and split him, and then headed for the corner, and just too much pace. Cross came Jack and Lindner, but they couldn't take him.
It's the case of one player faster than the other. He just beat him for speed. It was a great run.
The Great Britain coach looking a little concerned. I don't know why. 6-0, he'd be delighted, be over the moon.
The well-known punter took 15.5 point start, Darryl. I guess he'd be laughing.
Only one in Sydney, I think.
I'll tell you what we have got. We've got Pete Sterling coming off the football paddock.
Yes, Jackie hurt his arm. I saw him hurt his arm a little earlier, but we thought he might have just been working on it. But he looks pretty bad as he's being let off. Beardmore, the busy hooker there, Sterling, and he's in a bit of pain. Well, that's bad news for Australia. We'll come back to their reshuffle lineup in a moment. Great Britain with the ball, and there it is, half-time. So Great Britain leading Australia 6 points to 0 in what can only be considered a shock. Sterling goes off, and that's a bigger shock for Australia. Peter Sterling, who went off injured just prior to the half break time. Now this is it here. He dived to get Hanley and went down on his shoulder, his left shoulder, and as Hanley of course went over to score. So he's back on the field. Let's hope he's okay. Ready to start the second half. Referee Francis de Play now signals time on, and it's Lindner that brings it back for Australia, and Australia with plenty to do, with Great Britain leading 6 points to 0. Canescu getting it on to Backo. Backo looked to unload but decided to take the tackle, and look at Ward over the top. Every time that Backo's got the ball, Ward has been there. Borton, a bit quiet in the first half, but didn't get a lot of chances, I guess. The Englishman had the football and made good use of it. Daly, the big men staying to run for Australia. They've taken play midway between the half and the quarter. They're into the ground. Comes back to Lewis. He can't kick it, so he gives it to Sterling, and Sterling boots the ball. But Lachlan positioned well. Geez, a handy fullback, this fellow. He's so tall, but he's been in position all day.
Well, Sterling dropped that kick right into his mouth. He come up with it and picked up 10, 15 yards. Halfway.
Another busy player in forward. Again, they kick and find the line too. Went out on the full that time, though. The score, Great Britain 6, leading Australia 0. Have won only one series since 1970, Great Britain. The last two Kangaroo Tours in 84 and 86 by Australia, undefeated through England and France. So Australia with their record on the line here today. Curry fires one out for Lewis. There's a chance from Australia if they can link up. This is Jackson. Jackson running, swerving, can't link up though. This defence of Great Britain comes in and knocks him over again. Gregory and everything, he goes down on the ground. A little bit of Hollywood in that one. Jackson straightens it up, he's in front of the post. Three Great Britain players bring him down. Plenty of talking in the Australian side now. Out it comes for Gary Jack. He goes forward 4 or 5 and taken down. A chance now for Australia. Canescu. Out it comes to Sterling. There's the little grubber kick. He picks it up again and fires it out for Backo. Backo, I think he's in, yes! And a slam Great Britain's line by Big Sam Backo. Oh, big slam and Sam goes in for the green and gold. Oh, some clever work there from Peter Sterling. He kicked it, flicked the ball out. Backo was standing deep. And there they are congratulating each other. Look at this. Watch Sterling. The little angle kick, he miskicked it. Quickly flicked it back. Look at Backo, steamed onto the ball. Gets to the line and slams it down for 4 for Australia.
Well, that's perseverance. Look at this. Sterling turns a mistake into a plus. He was smart enough to regather that ball. Backo had the momentum to get over that little wide line.
Great Britain a little shell shock with that one. They've been playing so well, and there it is. So we have a scoreline now that's locked up. 6 apiece. Beardmore, Gregory again. Well, there's a bit of rough and tumble stuff going in the background, and look at this little fellow. He's everywhere. He gets it onto Lachlan. They've had a bit of trouble pulling Lachlan down. He's gone straight in there and beats 1 or 2. Beardmore straight into dummy half. Mick, do you think they should run it?
Oh, I think they should run it, yes. I think really, if you look, Australia has lifted their performance this half, but overall I think Great Britain has probably been the more constructive side.
Sloppy play there, but that man Gregory back on the ball.
Let's put a re-tackle count on here, so they've got 6 plays to go.
Forward, forward, forward. Still going forward. Oh, he's elusive, isn't he? Steps off both feet. Beardmore, Gregory, big hole there. No one to pass to. He still runs around in circles and can't link up with anybody. Beardmore, Schofield, the little tap, he was brought down. Was yes, sir. The referee saw that too and says, well, a water penalty to Great Britain over that. And Schofield hurt himself and he went down then too.
Well, I got to watch the replay, probably like everybody else, to see what happened here.
Here it is. Paul Lachlan has played pretty fair football here this afternoon. Haven't seen too much of him on the tour.
Darryl, I feel they're coming a little unglued at the seams here, Australia. England a little bit of extra possession, certainly putting plenty of pressure on them.
Waved away. Well, Mick, that could be a pretty expensive miss, that one.
Well, it could be, but both kickers have missed a couple of goals, so that'll probably even out the long run too.
Ray French, is that normal to miss a kick in such a situation there?
Well, that goal, Darryl, could be absolutely vital. Auckland's missed 4 out of 5 kicks. I appreciate they've not all been easy, but on a test match like this and as close as this, the goals have got to go over.
Ellery Hanley now from dummy half. Oh, and half a break too, Hanley. She's tough, he's strong. Very strong player, Ray.
He's a very strong player. He just needs half a gap. But in all honesty there, Darryl, there should have been some support there, and there wasn't. I just fear that Great Britain could be tiring a little bit at this stage now with 20 minutes to go.
Gary Jack gets it onto O'Connor. O'Connor swerving. They wrap him up. They know the danger of this man. Very fast, very elusive, very clever. Curry gets it onto Bacco. Bacco makes the 22. Sterling. Jackson. Spinning around. And I said, I agree with Ray a bit. I think it's happening to both sides. They seem to be running off short passes and getting in each other's way now as they flick a loose one out. Jackson wrapped up very quickly. Still manages to go, though, into the 22, and they hold him there. Well, Australia have gone nowhere. In 3 tackles have gone nowhere. Out for Sterling. Sterling kicks, rebounds. Taken by Canescu. He gets it back to Gary Jack. Gary Jack winds up, heads for the corner. Good defence, though. Gregory. Curry shows the ball. Oh, brick wall stuff there. Bang, stopped dead. Lewis handballs it back to Sterling. Comes back to Canescu. He mishandles. Goes behind him. Now he straightens up. Back where they started. Lewis, like a traffic cop, starts to direct traffic. Goes from there, Lewis. Oh, he's only a metre out. So, Australia, where are the big men? Gordon, still going. Gordon unloads back to Bacco. Bacco heading for the line, hitting no one, beat him. Oh, good stuff, both sides. Fullerton Smith gets it on to Sterling. Yes, Jackson's in. Oh, yes, Sterling with a beautiful pass to Jackson. They drew the English defence to the post and spun it out wide. And Jackson's over for Australia with a great pass off Sterling. Peter Jackson from the Canberra club, his first test. Age 24, and watch this, he won't forget this day. Takes a pass off Sterling and bang, and in for Australia. Well, Michael, I think too they sucked the British defence in near the post and then just spun it wide quickly.
Well, they did do that. I think Australia, just to win this game, they've just got to start, I think, playing their forwards a bit tighter, just sucking in the defence, but then start moving the ball wide.
And Michael O'Connor is successful with a kick, so Australia now surging ahead, 12 points to 6. Lachlan almost breaks that first tackle each time with those big, long, lanky legs. He's a striding runner. Platt. Beardmore dummy half. The score, 12-6 Australia's way. Long floater out. Here's a chance now for Schofield as he winds up. Schofield flicks one inside. Taken by Hume. Hume's got support. 6 to go, the referee says. So England now, Great Britain with a chance inside the 22. Australia getting back. They need to do something quickly. This man goes forward in Beardmore. They're about 13 metres out. Good chance for Great Britain. Australia, defence lined up hard. Back for a fire. Diving around. Stood up though in the tackle. Gregory. Onto Ward. Oh, forward pass. By a mile.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't blow the whistle. There's been a few earlier, but it was forward.
Oh yeah, long way forward. It was a shame too because the gap was there, but it was a mile forward. Look at Gary Jack. He's saying, what about that?
He must know a little French, that
Ellery Hanley.
Yeah, I think so, because it wasn't tough for the referee to interpret what he said.
Lewis kicks for touch. Well, Ray, that was a very important miss there for Great Britain. They had the territory and they had the momentum going.
It was a very important miss, Darrell. It was a good decision, I think, by the referee, but it was a very important piece of indiscipline by the Great Britain side there. They should have taken the scrum, and then Great Britain were on the attack. But I still believe this Great Britain side can come back.
Well, you would have had trouble seeing how much that pass was forward. We're up very high, of course, but it was a mile forward. But here's Borton. Borton now bustling and knocking over the Great Britain players. He goes forward. That's a great run from Borton. Out for Lewis. Lewis shows the ball, runs Lewis. Still going Lewis. He's a very strong player. Gets it out for Sterling. Ball loose. Picked up by Ettinghausen. Back he comes. Grits the teeth. Goes forward by 4 or 5 almost to the 22. Canescu. Australia not done with yet. They're coming back all of the time with Bacco again. He's been hard to handle this afternoon, Bacco. Lewis, shot for goal. Yes, sir, he's got it too. Cool as you like. Cool as you like. 13-6 now, Australia lead. Well, Mick Cronin, that's a pretty handy one.
Well, it gives them a cushion there, puts them 7 in front. So it means Great Britain got to score more than once now to win the game.
Well, Wally Lewis, 28 years of age, and with the Brisbane Bronco Club. Got a touch judge in. I'll come back to that in a moment. He's played 25 tests, two as a replacement. Has scored 7 tries. Made his debut. Well, he sent Borton to the sideline here with what's happened. Borton is going off. A replacement coming on. That's okay. We had a touch judge on, and I was going through some information there. We've got Roy Powell on, and we've got Stephen Folkes on. Gregory is going off for Great Britain. Borton has gone off for Australia. Gregory going off for Great Britain, and Powell in number 15, the player from Leeds, is on, and Stephen Folkes, the Canterbury player, on for Australia. Ettinghausen, taken by Gregory. Lovely tackle, beautiful tackle, right around the ankles. Jeez, a good player. I like him. He's of the Tommy Raudonikis mould.
He's a great player. He's had a pretty smart game too.
Dixon with a bit of push and shove, gets it on now to Fullerton Smith. Lights are on here in Sydney. It's got pretty dark pretty quickly here. Stephen Folkes with the ball. Back for Canescu. On for Lewis. Drives the ball down. And taken by Offia. Offia with a good run there too. Puts the ball up, but his hands are a big worry. And bundled into touch.
Well, I don't think you get congratulated on that. They've been without the ball, England, for a little while. And he's come up on a first play.
He seems to panic a bit, Jack, to me. Hume, the dummy half. Looking for the runners. It's Dixon that takes it up this time, and they're about 8 metres out. They need to get creative. Dixon. Gregory comes on to Schofield. He puts it down. Well, they can't afford that. He'd be unhappy about that, Ray French.
Well, it was a bad knock on there by Gary Schofield, but I think Great Britain are playing some frantic rugby, Darrell, frenetic rugby. They've got to do with 7 or 8 minutes to go, but what a performance. Everyone wrote off this Great Britain side here in Sydney, and these lads have shown there's still some pride in this British Lion.
Oh, I totally agree with that. Coming back to that player, Offia, I know he's a great character and he scored 44 tries in your season, but he seems to panic. But I'll stay here with Ettinghausen for the moment as he makes another bustling run up the touchline. Gets it back for Sterling. Australia on the attack. Sterling gets one under Lewis. Lewis looking for support, a long looping pass out for Curry. Curry gets a pedal down to the floor now and had O'Connor there and couldn't get it out. Oh, Australia going. The green and gold's in top gear. Linda heading for the line of fires, but yes sir, Australia have gone in again through Peter Jackson. Try number 2. Well, the momentum was going. It all started with Ettinghausen way over the other side, and they just drove the ball forward. Donnie Ferner, the Australian coach, would be delighted with that. That was really unexpected. Peter Jackson delighted there. Look at this, Wally Lewis. He gets it on to Linda. Linda splits him. Fires one out for Jackson, and Jackson just too strong from there. Peter Sterling going off, and Gary Belcher has come on for Australia. Peter Sterling, a great test. Henderson Gill ready to come out for Great Britain in number 14. Powerful looking fellow, this boy. So Lachlan is going off. Gregory's found the line. And Great Britain have a minute 40 to put some points on the board. Ward turns it back inside. The runners are coming through now. Dixon. Henderson Gill runs into dummy half, but he's quickly shoved away. Beardmore says that's my spot. Gets it out for Powell. Powell wrapped up. He's a pretty big man, this Powell, too.
I like that Powell. I thought he played well at Manly the other night. I'll be surprised if he doesn't make the next test.
Gregory out to Hume. Hume comes back. Onto Platt. He's taken by Canescu. Beardmore dummy half. They'd like to score a try if they could. Here's Ward. Goes past Platt. Comes out to Dixon. Dixon taken on the 22. They really haven't gone anywhere. Henderson Gill might go from a gallop from dummy half. Now he decides to pass it out to Gregory. Out to Hanley. On to Stevenson. On to Ford. He puts one out the back door for Stevenson, but they're going backwards. That's the 22 line. They've gone nowhere. Now they wind up and take play actually 10 metres short of the 22. So they lost about 30 metres in all of that. Gregory stabs the ball. It goes to Belcher. And we're in the last 30 seconds of this test now.
Well, I got to compliment Great Britain. Their enthusiasm hasn't waned. They've really gone for it.
Bullet and Smith. Here's the countdown now. 6, 5, 4. The crowd do it for us. And Australia have defeated Great Britain here at the Sydney Football Stadium. The first test played here, 17 points to 6. What was a game of stop-start football, but it was pretty entertaining. And Great Britain have showed some potential for the next 2 matches ahead. Players congratulating themselves now. Ray French, what are your thoughts here?
Well, I've got Ellery Hanley with me here, Darren. Ellery, although in defeat, you must be pleased with that performance. Tremendous effort.
Yeah, it was quite a first-class display, but I'm still not happy with our performance. We made too many basic errors. They had the footy ball longer than us. I'm disappointed. We've got a lot of things to work on, but I can assure you that we'll be giving the game back at Lang Park.
A great defensive and tackling skill from your pack, Ellery, and everyone, in fact, wrote us off, didn't they?
Yeah, they wrote us off and everything, but you look at the papers tomorrow, it's 17-6 for them, and I know that our lads and everybody in GB, they won't be happy, and I'm not satisfied.
Well, Ellery looked as though he put everything into it as usual, but Britain's still not beaten the Australians in 10 years. They'll have another go in Brisbane on June the 28th. That's the second test. Well, we're looking forward this afternoon to the European Football Championship, the second match of the Championship, Spain against Denmark. Bob's here with us to have some thoughts on what's gone on already and ahead. But Jack Charlton's already named his team for the match against England. Yes. No real surprises, I take it.
No, he said it's his most experienced side, Des. From my point of view, I think there's one surprise, Tony Galvin in there at number 11 instead of Kevin Sheedy. That's, I think, because Sheedy's missed so much of the build-up, and he's gone for Galvin, who has, of course, terrific pace, but on the other hand, Sheedy has that beautiful left foot that he shows at Everton, and he can thread balls through defences, and he scores a lot of goals from free kicks. And he hasn't... the one question mark, I would say, is up the front, because John Aldridge hasn't scored a goal in 15 internationals, which is ominous when Mancini scores for Italy last night on his the first one. And Frank Stapleton there, well, he doesn't score that many goals. So David Kelly, the young lad at Walsall, I think purely on inexperience, Jack's left him out.
He'll play, though, in due course,
I think he will, yes,
in the Championship.
Yes.
How did you think it all started last night? It wasn't a bad game.
I stayed awake.
Yeah, they're often really boring, the first matches of these major championships. Yeah. It was quite a decent match, wasn't it, this time?
I think you have to understand that they often are boring because people can't afford to lose that first game. If you lose that first game, you've got 3 in your qualifying group, you really may well be out of the tournament. You've got a lot of work to do if you lose the first one. So inevitably they are a little bit boring. Inevitably they finish up as a draw.
Yeah, well,
but it was quite entertaining.
The referee, Keith Hackett, came in for a little bit of stick, and some thoughts on that in a moment. But let's remind you, if you haven't seen it, of exactly what happened.
And Vialli walks away and can't believe that he's missed a wonderful chance to put the Italians in front. And look at the mess in the German defence. Kohler's back header. Erget didn't have the pace. Vialli did. He got beyond them both. And what a good stop by the goalkeeper. Right hand. Well taken by Zenga. So the opening match will not be a 0-0 draw, which is a source of a moment of anxiety for Italy. Zenga holding onto the ball too long, and Germany have a free kick, indirect, inside the area. Now Bremer is a player who can strike from here. So is Mateus. They're the ones to watch, maybe. The wall!
So 1-1. The free kick first step seemed at first sight a bit pernickety, but you've got another view. You think it was right, don't you?
Oh, yes, I do. I think you'll find that Zenga will have been warned, Des, anyway, before that, because right throughout the game, as I watched it last night, I thought, well, this guy's getting away with murder. I mean, just take this as an example in the first half. Remember, from the time that ball is dead in his arms, it's 4 steps. Now, there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6... Still going on with it. 7, 8, 9, 10th one he hits the ball. What worries me about the refereeing of Keith Hackett last night, really, and with all top referees, is they seem to be hit or miss. Now, whether it's the speed of the game, I don't know, but take this situation with Mateus. He suddenly changes pace, runs at them, is clearly foul. It's a chopping foul right across his legs there, in a dangerous position. Now, Keith Hackett gave nothing there. There are the arms up. No problem. That's wrong. So that was a wrong one. And I think at half-time he should have booked both these players. Number 11 is Di Napoli, and the other one is Olaf Thon. I'll call him Thon the Con, because what happens here, it's a bad tackle from Thon there. There's a little flick of the leg from Di Napoli, never touches him, 2.5 delay, and that's worth an Oscar, that is. Never touched him at all, and he's trying to get...
And Mr. Hackett flew immediately for half-time after that.
Well, yes.
No punishment.
No, it's the safest thing. But there are a few comments from Franz Beckenbauer, and I think a little justified.
Why don't we continue this discussion right after the news now with Moira Stewart.
Good afternoon. The Labour leader, Neil Kinnock, has said that the party must free itself from impossible promises or it won't get elected. He told a rally in County Durham that he'd face any critic, any rival, any adversary to argue the case for policy review. He urged his supporters, address yourself to the realities of today and tomorrow, produce the policies for Britain as it is and as it will be. Tony Benn, who's challenging Mr. Kinnock for the leadership of the party, told a special socialist conference this morning that there was too much confusion and evasion in the Labour Party, especially on defence. And Bruce Kent, the CND chairman, has attacked Mr. Kinnock's remarks last weekend, apparently rejecting unilateral disarmament. Mr. Kent said this was the wrong way for the Labour Party to try to get itself elected. In the biggest event of its kind since Live Aid, more than 70,000 people have packed into Wembley Stadium for a concert to mark the 70th birthday of the jailed black South African leader Nelson Mandela. The concert got underway just over half an hour ago. It'll last for 10 hours and is being beamed live to 1 billion people in more than 50 countries. Half the proceeds will go to the anti-apartheid movement. The rest will go to the charities working for children in Southern Africa. A family of 4 has died in a house fire at Linlithgow near Edinburgh. Among the dead were 2 children, aged 1 and 2. A woman died after jumping from a bedroom window. 3 heroes of the Enniskillen Poppy Day massacre are among hundreds honoured in the Queen's birthday honours list.
After the Remembrance Day bombing in Enniskillen, local medical teams had to work at full stretch to try and cope with a large number of injured people. Most of them were taken to Erne Hospital in Enniskillen, and 3 of the hospital's staff have been honoured for their work on that day. Consultant surgeon Andrew McKibben has been awarded the OBE. Casualty sister Jane Packham has been made an MBE, and the head porter Pat Curry gets a BEM. The chairman of the newly created Broadcasting Standards Council, Sir William Rees-Mogg, has been given a life peerage. It's regarded as an indication of how much importance Mrs. Thatcher puts on his new role of scrutinising the moral standards of television in this country. Cyril Smith, the irrepressible SLD MP, has been given a knighthood after 16 years as the member for Rochdale. In the world of literature, Nobel Prize-winning author William Golding, who wrote The Lord of the Flies, gets a knighthood. From the world of theatre, actor Michael Bryant, a veteran of the National Theatre and the Royal Shakespeare Company, gets a CBE. Steve Davis, the world snooker champion, becomes an NBE, as does his namesake Laura Davis, England's top woman golfer. And Patrick Moore, the man who made astronomy popular and a star in his own right, has been awarded a CBE.
It was the Queen's annual birthday parade this morning. Thousands were at Horse Guards Parade to watch the Trooping the Colour.
For the second year running, the Queen inspected the parade not on horseback, but from the ivory carriage first built for Queen Victoria. The Queen's colour of the Irish Guards was trooped today. For the first time, the Guardsmen have been parading with the Army's new rifle, the SA-80. 3 pounds heavier than the self-loading rifle it's replaced, special drill movements were incorporated into the ceremonial to relieve the weight on the Guardsmen's shoulders. Several other members of the royal family attended the parade today, including the Princess of Wales, riding in a carriage with her son, Prince William.
And that's the news. Now back to Desmond Lynham in the grandstand studio.
Moira, thanks very much indeed. Well, as we've said, Jack Charlton has predictably really announced his team for the match against England tomorrow. But, Bob, England seem to have injury worries. The papers are going strong on Lineker perhaps not being fit this morning, but I think that's cleared up, hasn't it?
Cleared up, Des, yes. It has just come through that Gary is fit, and that's good. I mean, a man who scores 26 goals in 28 starts, they can't afford him to be out. He might not get them there, actually. He'll be so closely marked in this tournament that it might rest with Beardsley and Barnes. But because he's such a threat, because he's such a world name, that's great, because, I mean, people are so aware of him now, they could be marking him and it could fall to Beardsley and Barnes to be the goal scorers.
But more worries about the defence, the heart of the defence, which is England's problem area.
Yes, it is. On the other hand, it's good that England go into a tournament saying that they're a side with a chance because of their attack rather than their defence. That makes a change for England. But obviously with Mark Wright being very much a doubt still, and Watson being definitely out, that is it's a big worry, because I'm not quite sure what he would do. The talk is that Gary Stevens would perhaps go into the middle of defence with Tony Adams.
Has he played there before?
I think as a stopgap for Everton he may have done that, but I don't think that's good enough. I think Brian Robson, the captain, would be a better bet to go in there. I know how much you miss there, and then he would be left with the decision, who does he replace Robson with in midfield? Do you go for the steel of McMahon, or do you go for the man that you and I particularly love to watch, Glenn Hoddle, and who Cruyff and I think everybody in Europe say, well, why shouldn't he be playing in the side?
Well, it remains to be seen. We ought to bear in mind that it's Spain against Denmark this afternoon, and we've got that match live for you. That's the other Group 1 game. Let's hear what Gary Lineker has to say about the Spanish team, talking with Tony Gubber.
What are your thoughts about Spain, Gary? Because they come to this championship having had, what, 1 or 2 disappointing results.
Yes, they've had some very bad results lately. I think they lost against Sweden at home 3-1. They've not beaten anybody for quite some time, but the Spaniards are very inconsistent, and they're quite capable of, on the day, upsetting somebody, and they could still qualify if they had 2 of their really good days. I can't honestly see them winning the tournament, because I don't think they'll be consistent enough, but they could cause an upset.
In fact, in that defeat against Sweden, there were 1 or 2 question marks about the man who's supposed to be their great goalkeeper, Zubizarreta.
Yeah, I suppose we're all entitled to a bad game occasionally. He's not had the best of seasons at Barcelona. He had a terrific first season. He suffered a little bit from criticism from the crowd. It got him down. But he came strong towards the end of the season. But he's a good goalkeeper, and I can't see him letting him down when it really matters.
Sure. What about the defence?
Well, again, I think the question marks for Spain are at the centre of defence. Basically because they'll miss Goycochea. He's injured. Matheda, who plays for Real Madrid, has been out for 2 years, and apparently they really miss him. So they've never really replaced them. Sanchez is a good player from Madrid. But that looks to be the area where some teams might get at them. But who knows? Wayne's.
In fact, the 3 goals they conceded against Sweden almost all came down the middle.
That's right. I think they're a bit worried about high ball centres as well as balls in the air, which was what they were saying after the Sweden game in the Spanish press.
Sure. And what about the midfield? Because there's 1 or 2 players there that you play with at Barcelona.
Right. They've got some good midfield. I mean, Michel is certainly one of the best midfield players in Europe. Plays for Madrid. He'll play on the right side of midfield. He's talented. He's a bit Glenn Hoddle-ish. He's very gifted, good vision. Plays a bit towards the right side of midfield than Glenn would, but he's a good player. There are a couple of our Victoria players, a seasoned veteran. He's your up and down. If you want to compare him to an England player, he'd be your Peter Reid. I think Peter is a better passer of the ball than probably Victor is, but he's a tremendous workaholic and he'll battle there all day for them.
And of course they've got Gordillo, who's always looks to be a big, strong athlete.
Yeah, he is a tremendous athlete. He plays for Real Madrid down the left side, probably more left wing than anything. But he sort of plays left back, left wing everywhere. He's up and down, good crosser of the ball. He'll cause problems. He's a good player.
Obviously, a big problem for Spain will be scoring goals. Where do you see any Spanish goals coming from?
Well, Butragueño is a tremendous player, but he's not the out-and-out goal scorer. He's more like Peter Beardsley. He'll wriggle at players. He'll cause a tremendous amount of danger, and he'll create a lot of chances. The question mark is who will score the goals. They've got Salinas that we've just bought, and also Baquero we've just bought. But Baquero is probably a little bit similar to Butragueño. I don't know who he'll play there, but that could be another little problem area for them.
In fact, this doesn't help Spain's prospects in the Championship that they come with one or two question marks at home against the manager, Munoz.
Well, that's the same against all managers if they don't get the results. If we lose the first two games, they'll be saying the same about ours. Hopefully that won't happen, won't be the case, but managers are judged by the results, always have been, always will be.
Do you see a result for Spain?
I think in the first game, either of them, because I think Denmark have had a little bit of a sticky time as well. I think they're perhaps some of the better players are getting on a little bit now in football terms. So it could go either way. If Spain have the day, they're capable of winning, and you probably say the same about Denmark. So I think it'd probably be one of the most difficult results to predict.
Of course, the Danes have been a revelation in the 80s, but they say they're a bit past it. Some of their star players are off form at the moment. Archie Macpherson now reports from the Danish camp.
And what better way to enhance the pastoral scene than an object as German as roast beef and Yorkshire pudding? Now, if we found the sight of a British telephone kiosk here a trifle bizarre, what do you think the Danes thought of it all? Mark you, in footballing terms, they are a pretty cosmopolitan bunch. Have Boots Will Travel has never been more appropriate than with them. They're fond of dairy, produce and fat contracts, and by common consent are one of the most entertaining sides to have entered the fray in the last decade. Yet they do have suicidal tendencies, as a Mexican World Cup encounter with Spain indicated. Olsen.
Oh, that's very loose. And Butragueño makes it 1-1. And Jesper Olsen puts his head in his hands. And Camacho! And turned in. Butragueño gets his second. Micho. More credit to the Spaniards, they're still going forward. This is Eloy, and that's the hat-trick for Butragueño, and that, for sure, is Spain in the last 8.
Well, apart from that game, I think that the way it went, I mean, the equaliser they got just before half-time, and we still had a couple of chances in the beginning of the second half.
You don't like remembering that one, do you?
Not really, no, that's why I'm not mentioning it, but I just think that after that they scored on the chances they had. And 5-1 was not the score it should have been at all.
In the game against Spain, we lose our head, you know. But I think if you have to want to go out, you have to go out with not 2-1 or 1-0, 5-1, finish, everything finish.
But I think against such a side as Spain, it was a little naive. So I think we have learned a lot from the second half, and because of that we have played realistic, and because of that we have qualified.
But they squeezed their way into the finals with a goal that the Welsh hotly disputed and Copenhagen warmly received. They had struggled rather than sparkled, and the scarcity of qualifying goals made the Danes rather shamefaced.
Yes, four goals in 6 matches is not a lot. if you compare with the 19 that England scored, for example. But on the other hand, they only scored 2 against us, so you can say that we have now a very good defense that we didn't have earlier.
We have a little bit of problem what we should prefer, and to make our game, to make the Danish way of play more strict and after tactic and defensive, and say, well, you must not that and not that. That I think it will kill a little bit the spirit of Danish football.
This is Laudrup. Still Laudrup. Elkjær! Yes, 1-0 Denmark. Can he get the cross in? He can. Lerby, 2-0. Mikael Laudrup. Still Laudrup. Still Laudrup. Brilliant. Laudrup. Is he through again? Laudrup. Goalkeeper. Elkjær. And here's Elkjær. Elkjær through. Is this the hat-trick? Preben Elkjær, yes it is. Elkjær. And he's got Jesper Olsen, the substitute. Is it 6? It is.
I think we have timed it so most of the players are ready for the game Saturday. And of course, Frank Arnesen, from PSV Eindhoven, he has broke his leg. He is, of course, not with us. But most of the players, I think 12, 13 players from the last 2 tournaments is here. And then some young boys with the enthusiasm.
The Danes always scored a couple of years ago, but what now? Because the front players have lost their goal touch, haven't they? Laudrup in particular.
Yes, Elkjær and Laudrup both failing to score goals, Des. I think the best person to talk about Michael Laudrup really is Ian Rush, because after all he does play alongside him in the Juventus team.
I think in Mexico he had an exceptional World Cup there. For me, he's got the most skill I've ever seen or played with, of anyone. He's unbelievable. But his problem is he doesn't always play it very well. If you let him play, he'll tear anyone apart. He's very fast down the wing as well. I think the only problem is he doesn't seem to score as many goals as what he should do. But when he's on form, he can make goals for anyone. And I think if he is on form, Denmark will be a team to watch.
Spain or Denmark for you this afternoon?
It is. Gary Lineker summed it up beautifully, really. It's a case of who plays well on the day. I think we've got to remember that Spain are half the Real Madrid side and Denmark are a side who play their football right across Europe, and on that basis, and the fact that Denmark are getting a little bit old, I'm going to go for Spain on the extra teamwork.
On the day?
Of knowing there are more lads in there, who know each other from Real Madrid.
Right. I've gone for them. They're in my last 4. They'll lose. Now, we're going to switch away from football. That match live, just to remind you, coming up at 2:30 this afternoon, Spain, Denmark. Now we're going to switch to cycling and the milk race, the Tour of Britain milk race. It began in London a fortnight ago. They're a bit saddle-sore by now, I would think, because it's the last day today, and we'll be showing you the last part of the race in Birmingham live a little later on. But let's bring you the entire story of the milk race so far with Phil Liggett and Hugh Porter.
The milk race is Britain's longest cycling marathon, 1,150 miles in 12 days, and with the route changing every year, this year's race began on Monday, May the 30th on London's Westminster Bridge. And among the fancied riders for victory in Birmingham in 2 weeks' time was Joey McLaughlin, the 23-year-old from Liverpool, who 2 years ago was the first British winner of the event for 10 years. From Czechoslovakia, there was Miroslav Sikora, who finished 3rd last year, the highest placed of those returning for the race this time. And from the Soviet Union, Igor Sumnikov, a winner of 5 stages last year, including 1 on this very bridge. And the British hope, Paul Curran, a 27-year-old from Thornaby, the British and Commonwealth Games champion, and our main hope for a medal in Seoul this summer. On the stroke of 10 o'clock, the 95 riders set off, facing 117 miles between London and Bournemouth. But first of all, a gentle ride out to the outskirts of the city. 2 old British teammates, Chris Lillywhite on the left and Paul Curran in the centre, now rivals, Lillywhite a professional and Paul Curran in the Great Britain team. On the outskirts of Kingston-on-Thames on the A3, the race got underway. The rather dreary conditions were to be a feature of the opening days of this race, and the first attack came from Britannia, and it was the youngster David Hassan, a late replacement in the Britannia team coming from Glasgow. Hassan went out in front, but by the time the field came into South Harting, his 16-mile breakaway had been wiped out. The whole field were together, with still 60 miles to go to the finish in Bournemouth. Cormac McCann on the back wheel here of Leo Palin from the Netherlands, they too tried to chance their arm, but the field were always vigilant on this opening stage. It appeared too that McCann had a back wheel problem, because soon Palin was left on his own and in no mood to continue in the heavy rain. By the time the field swept down Richmond Hill into Bournemouth to end this opening day, the roads were dry. Half a dozen riders had gone clear. But there was one man who'd already finished the race before them, and that was the Minister of Sport, Colin Moynihan. Moynihan had started 4 hours ahead of the race and was waiting to welcome them. What a great ride he'd done. And the field, coming in towards the finish, the 6 riders just a few seconds ahead, it was a first stage victory for Philippe Cassadeau of France. The professionals had won the opening day. The first yellow jersey going to the man who a year ago had retired from this race with a broken collarbone. How fortunes can change.
And after an overnight rest, the 95 riders were off on their travels again, facing them a 115-mile leg from Bournemouth to Exeter. Philippe Cassadeau in yellow, and he would be dearly hoping to hang on to that leadership when they arrived at the stage end. But for Paul Curran, the Commonwealth champion, he was having problems. He'd overdressed for the day, and he went through a difficult manoeuvre of trying to cut his undervest off. Not recommended when you're riding a bike at 30 miles an hour. And the first farmhouse cheese sprint of the day was taken by Mark Walsham of the Percy Bilton team. But out in front it was a young Nottingham rider, Andy Herford, who had decided to take things into his own hands. Herford had gone ahead hoping for company, and this would then form a breakaway group. But behind, and completely unknown to Herford, an accident had completely blocked the road. A mobile marshal had collided with a stationary motorbike. The whole field were forced to dismount. They didn't seem too concerned at this stage, for they didn't consider Herford as a danger man. Meanwhile, the Nottingham rider was pedalling away sweetly up the ascent of Zigzag Hill. The field finally restarted after a delay of some 7 minutes, but there didn't seem any urgency in the pace. They still didn't consider Herford a danger man. But when the lead had swelled to some 16 minutes for the Nottingham man, David Rayner of the Rally Banana team was getting a little concerned. He went to the front of the group. So did Casado. And there was McLaughlin helping him as well, trying to inject some pace into this group. The first 2 riders trying to bridge the gap were England's Carl Smith and Dutchman Egbert Schmidt. They began to force the pace at the front. Herford, although tiring now, was still anxious to try and get to Exeter first, and he wasn't giving up. But as so often happens, a lone break generally fails, and he was joined by Poland's Czeslaw Reich and the Dutchman Albert Arp. So these 3 were then together, and Herford took his place at the back. But onto the finishing circuit in Exeter, it was the 2 breakaway riders of Zhdanov of the Soviet Union and Kulas of Poland. And coming into the finishing straight, Kulas tried hard, but he couldn't match the power of Zhdanov, and so the Soviet Union claimed this stage victory, with Vasily Zhdanov beating Kulas. But behind, there was a ferocious gallop for 3rd place. It was the old milk race favourite, Igor Sumnikov in red, that just outpaced Mark Walsham for 3rd. For Andy Herford, it had been a long and lonely ride. 90 miles out in front, but he'd won some prizes for being first over the mountains. So the Soviet Union back in control. This man, Zhdanov, the new leader. He would be looking for support from his team, and in particular, the strong powerhouse eating there, Igor Sumnikov. And their mountain climb specialist, Ivan Ivanov, he would be on hand too to control things. There was a huge crowd to send the riders off from the Guildhall on this 55-mile leg from Exeter to Plymouth. And out on Dartmoor, an early break developed. It was Bob Downs of the Percy Bilton team, Tom Bamford of the New Zealand team, and Vladimir Berka of Czechoslovakia. They quickly began to work hard. But behind, there were all sorts of problems. Riders were puncturing, and there was a crash that involved 20 riders. Here, Koberstein of Canada was suffering with stomach problems. And this was the end of the milk race for the courageous Canadian rider. It was also a very busy day for the ambulance, with 5 people taken to hospital. And it was a sad day for this man, Igor Sumnikov, who'd sprinted so courageously the day before, a hot favourite for this milk race, and now he was trailing in the back group. But into Plymouth, the 2 leaders, Downs on the left and Berka just slipping in behind in blue, were heading out towards the finishing circuit. Downs, a man who'd ridden 8 milk races, was still searching for that first stage victory. And behind, there was concern. The gap was 3 minutes, and the leader, Zhdanov, was getting a little bit concerned. He started to call for his manager to ask him what he should do. Bob Downs sprinted confidently to take the Farmhouse Cheese sprint, beating Berka quite comfortably. I wonder if this was an omen for the final. But trailing round at the back was Sumnikov, almost 3/4 of a lap behind, and with little hope of winning anything in this milk race. But into the final sprint, it was the Czech Berka that led out. Downs challenged strongly on the right, but he hadn't got the strength to beat the flying Czech, who drove on hard for the line. And so Downs, in his 9th milk tour, was denied a stage victory again. After the loss of their team leader, Miroslav Sikora, earlier in the stage, it was now all smiles for the Czechs, for Berka was in yellow.
Day 4, and the field faced its longest day, 123 miles across Dartmoor and on to Weston-super-Mare. And nothing yet had been seen of Joey McLaughlin, the man Britain really were pinning their hopes on. As you can see, the conditions were absolutely dreadful. At times, visibility was 0, and the riders faced a treacherous crossing of the moor. McLaughlin quite clearly still felt in trouble. He's now come back to the doctor for advice, and the doctor said, if you go back into the race, it's your own decision. And quite clearly, McLaughlin decided to give it another go. But at the front of the race, there was better news for the USA, because 20-year-old Chris Bailey had descended the hillsides off Dartmoor at over 50 miles an hour. He now was holding a lead as the field approached the outskirts of Exeter. But for McLaughlin, there was still a big question on his mind, to go on or to stop. And judging by the fact his team car has come back with him, McLaughlin has decided to make the saddest of all decisions, to abandon the race he so much wanted to win for a second time. McLaughlin's retirement hadn't reached the front of the bunch, and it was the Britannia rider Gary Baker in his first milk race who was setting off in pursuit of the leader Bailey, and also the Polish rider Marek Kulas. 3 riders had broken clear, and by the feeding station at halfway they were all together. Kulas was leading, then come Baker, and finally Bailey. Meanwhile, still trouble for the professional riders, because at the back of the race, Chris Walker, number 136 from the Rally Banana team, had a knee injury, a legacy of the crash going into Plymouth the previous day. All the way along the route, this is Langport, the crowd cheered on the milk race men. It really was turning out to be a brilliantly hard-fought race. The winner the previous day in Plymouth and now the race leader, Vladimir Berka, was keeping his eye on those he thought would be dangerous to his lead. He couldn't watch everybody, and the 3 riders ahead were making the most of their escape. By the time they came into Weston-super-Mare, they had a lead good enough to give Koulas, the man at the front waving to the crowd, the yellow jersey. But Chris Bailey and Baker were also thinking of the stage win, so we commenced this small 1-mile circuit to be covered 4 times. Just a few seconds ahead of the field in 4th and 5th places was Graham Miller of New Zealand, number 73, and the Dutchman Frank van Veenendaal. As the riders came round, these are the 3 leaders, to complete their first mile lap, there was a surprise in store. Koulas in the lead, Baker in 2nd place, and the whole field join in. They're coming on 1 lap behind. At least the 3 in front know they can't be caught now. But confusion for everybody, because lost in this pack are the first 3 riders on the stage, and only the camera will decide which one of them will win. This is the sprint for 6th place, won by Sławomir Krawczyk of Poland. The camera will later tell us that Gary Baker of the Britannia team is the winner of the stage. He didn't care where he finished as long as he got the cheque for £1,000. So we move on to stage 5. And this was the first day in the Welsh Mountains. It began in Thornhill near Caerphilly. It finished over the Devil's Staircase and down in Aberystwyth, a ride of 104.5 miles. It all began, if a little bumpy, very calmly across the cobblestones of the beautiful Cardiff Castle. No hurry here, the race was rolling out to its race official start. Once the race was underway, the riders were on the climb of Thornhill. Then we'll follow this, a 70-mile-an-hour descent into Caerphilly. This was the first real climb of a very hilly few days, and the man on the front in the red jersey, Chris Lillywhite, had led the King of the Mountains competition right from day 1. It was important now he was in the action at the top of this climb for the points that counted towards this particular competition. There was one man, of course, who had other ideas, and that was number 73, Graham Miller. The New Zealander has been out of New Zealand now for over 4 months with the sole ambition to win a gold medal in the Olympic Games this year. He was on the attack as soon as the field moved on towards Merthyr Tydfil. But as the sprint started for the top of the climb in Dowlais Top above Merthyr, it was 101, the Russian hill climb champion, Ivanov on our left, who was taking on Lillywhite. But Lillywhite was just too strong. More points in the bag. And then it was out towards the Brecon Beacons, with Ivanov 101 beginning to get into his rhythm. Also here was Britain's number 1, Paul Curran, and a long ride to come. This was to be a day of marvellous aggression, and the riders really showing their worth as the finest bike riders in the world. The field was stringing out across the Brecon Beacons, and the man in white here, Neil Stevens, seemed to be preoccupied with other problems. And then came very slippery descents, and one rider who crashed, Lillywhite, both wheels wrecked. Stevens still in trouble, and what's this on his top tube? His brake had broken away from the frame. Here was a man riding the most difficult roads in treacherous conditions, and he only had one brake. And the yellow jersey of Marek Koules was already in trouble. He was losing over half an hour. No such problems for Neil Stevens. More important, how about a new bike? Because this one with only one brake today is no use at all. So near Brecon, Stevens was back in the race with another bike. And what a race it was turning out to be. The pacemakers had broken clear of more than half the field now, leaving behind them riders many, many minutes behind. Anybody with ambition to win the milk race now had to be in this group. And one man anxious to get on with the racing was 155, Pascal Perrimore of the Z Peugeot team from France. and a man to recognise the danger, the hill climb champion from the Soviet Union. Soon on the attack to go after Peremor was Ivan Ivanov. Ivanov rode the race a year ago, victory taken away from him perhaps by a puncture. Now was it to be the road blocked ahead by sheep, the sort of spectators the milk race didn't really want to see. With still 40 miles to go, Ivanov caught up with Pascal Peremor. The good news too, the sheep had all gone. All that remained ahead of these two riders now was 40 of the hilliest miles in Wales, and Ivanov, with all the qualifications, was the best man to face up to them. Pascal Peremor, one of France's new young hopes, a first-year professional, took one glance over his shoulder and probably thought, of all the people to join me, not this one, please. After the race had passed through Abergwesin, the narrow mountain road that takes the race through to Dugaran was entered. A beautifully exposed road with some of the toughest climbs in Britain, and the field were now more concerned about the whereabouts of Ivanov and Pascal Peremor. Well, they were already on the climb, known aptly enough perhaps as the Devil's Staircase, a 1 in 4 brute, and the man in trouble was Pascal Peremor. Certainly Ivanov had clicked into his rhythm, but the field behind, led by Paul Curran and Neil Stevens from Australia, weren't too far back at this point, and after all, these really were the cream of the whole field. No one else now was in with a hope of winning this year's milk race, despite the fact there was still 900 miles to go. At the top of the Devil's Staircase, Ivanov was alone. Peremor was dropping back. All that remained now was to stay in front for the next 25 miles, and there was still one more climb to come before the seaside and Aberystwyth were reached. It's a long time since the Soviet team has won the milk race, 3 years to be precise, since the race was open to professional riders. They've always said that we shouldn't have professionals in the race, and now they've come back with a vengeance. Aberystwyth was waiting, and what they were about to see will be one of the finest individual performances by a rider in the milk race for many, many years. Ivan Ivanov, on the attack all day, was now minutes ahead of everyone. In fact, riders were said to be over 20 miles behind him. The promenade was the happiest place for him to be. He was racing to the yellow jersey. It's not surprising the man with 101 on his back was very, very happy indeed. The favourite phrase of the Russian riders in this year's milk race. In second place was Neil Stevens in the white, and behind him an excellent performance from David Rayner from Bradford. But they were over 6 minutes back. At least they seemed to be pretty happy about it, and well they might be, because the main field came in a further minute behind them, and it was Sławomir Krawczyk of Poland who won the sprint. David Rayner was fighting back. The under-22 winner a year ago, he was up there again now. And Chris Lillywhite, a good day for him too. More points in the mountains and still the leader. But for others, life wasn't so pleasant. This man was in all sorts of trouble. The nice part of being the race leader in the milk race is autograph time, and Ivan Ivanov was a very, very contented man. The last man to finish this cruel stage was 25 years old Tom Banford from Hamilton in New Zealand. But all the finishes deserved applause, and the crowd has stayed around to welcome him home. For the Dutch team, they were already in and feeling very happy. They'd found a new star in the team in Martin Kokkelkoren, who was only 19 years old. But for some, they didn't even ride home. There was at least 4 riders abandoned the race.
Well, 1 day away from the rest day, and the riders are setting off for Llandudno, and in some of their minds they'll be glad to hang the wheels up. But between them is another 88-mile stage, with several very hard climbs. For this man, the race leader, Ivanov, he has 4 3/4 minutes lead over his nearest challengers. He'll be looked after by his strong team. All the riders were active in the field, in particular the Polish men. But at the front, keeping a watchful eye on anyone that might attack, were the red-vested Russian riders. And heading out towards the toughest climb of the tour, the Porky Gross, a 1 in 3 at the bottom, it was Neil Stevens, the Australian, that turned first through the gate. Stevens, this powerful Australian, set a stern test for the rest of the riders with a hot pace at the front, but never far away was the yellow jersey of Ivanov. But for some it was just too much. The Dutchman Leo Peelen, he took his shoes off and decided to walk all the way up. A good group had developed over the top, and Adrian Timmis was rather anxious to get the yellow jersey working. He was having none of it. But those that did have to work were the American team, for Chris Bailey was here and he'd started the stage second overall, so the Americans had to set a hot pace to try and fetch the leaders back. Punctures and mechanical trouble are inevitable on the gritty mountain roads, and the mechanics were kept busy all day. But at the front, the Australian Neil Stevens looks across at Adrian Timmis and he seems amazed that they have been caught. But as so often happens, as one group is caught, another one develops. And this time it was the Canadian Brian Walton that went to the front, and inevitably he had the red shadow, and this time it was Vasily Zhdanov. Walton, this superb hill climber, motored to the top of Folas in effortless ease, and behind him Zhdanov sat comfortably. The bunch at this stage were trailing by 1.5 minutes. And into the finishing straight, it was Walton that got the better over Zhdanov in the initial jump, but somehow or other the Soviet rider dug deep and seemed to find more. Walton died a little as the line was approaching, and it was Zhdanov that squeezed through on the left to take his second stage victory of the tour. But for the Canadian Walton, second place was a marvellous performance and one he would cherish. And for the backmarkers, the sight of the line meant they'd made it to the end of the first week and they could look forward to a rest day.
One of the New Zealand boys there, number 71, Terry Crosser out from Brantford, leads them home.
And so at the end of the first week, the Soviet team had won 3 of the first 6 stages and they had the yellow jersey. And their warmth and friendship was certainly shining through.
After their only rest day in Chester, on Sunday, the riders were then back in the mountains. This time it was the Peak District between Chester and Sheffield, a ride of 109 miles. And Chester were all ready to welcome the milk race men on their 7th day. So historic Chester said farewell to the survivors of the milk race as they started their 2nd week. The 7 miles climb of the Cat and Fiddle Pass outside Macclesfield was the first real major test of the day. But at the back of this group, already in trouble, was Britain's Paul Curran. Ill over the weekend, he was destined to lose many minutes. 1